Hey, y'all. Listen, our society has a new problem, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called AI slop. Cheap articles, strange images, low effort video, everywhere you go. And a lot of people online are seemed to convince the robots have ruined the internet. But here's the strange thing. The internet was already full of garbage long before AI showed up, which raises a really uncomfortable question. What if the internet isn't drowning in AI slop at all? What if artificial intelligence is just exposing something a lot of people would rather not admit? That humans built the slop economy first. Here's the strange thing. If you actually look at the timeline, this problem didn't start with AI. It started with something else entirely. So, welcome back to Country Cynic. And here we follow the timeline, the incentives, and the numbers, because sooner or later, the narrative has to face the math. So, let's see how this one holds up.
This new AI tool will change everything.
The models are generating unprecedented amounts of synthetic media.
It's just slop, absolute slop.
So, as we mentioned right now, the internet has this new villain, artificial intelligence. And people say that AI is flooding the internet with junk. Low effort articles, cheap videos, mass produced content. And the phrase that people keep using is AI slop. And I kind of look at that as a pseudo clinical weapon known as projection, meaning they're out there producing human slop and they're not getting anywhere with it. So, therefore, let me blame AI slop taking my opportunity away from me. And look, I understand the concern because technology always shakes things up. The way people talk about this, you would think the internet used to be some sort of library where we were all reading thoughtful essays and discovering amazing poems. And then one day robots turned up and turned the internet into complete garbage. But if you've been around long enough to know, like I have, you might remember something called content farms. And it turns out robots didn't invent low effort content. Humans beat them to it by about a decade. So, back in early 2010s, and I would argue probably earlier than that, entire companies were built around producing internet content as cheaply as possible, as quick as possible. You had demand media, associated content, Yahoo Contributor Network, Forbes Council, Inc. magazine, Fortune, they all participate in this. The model was simple: find search traffic, provide articles fast, run ads, and cash out the profit. Writers were paid $10 per article and sometimes less. The internet wasn't written for readers, it was being written for algorithms, search engine optimization, as it used to be known. Artificial intelligence didn't just invent this system, humans did. The internet learned something important during the content farm era. Low effort content worked. And once the platforms figured that out, things started to move really fast. Now, fast forward to today, and there is another phrase floating around online, and that is brain rot. And that's used to describe endless short videos, fast edits, constant stimulation, basically content that's designed to keep your attention just long enough for that next video to start. It's digital junk food. And people like to complain that the internet is being ruined by low quality content. But here's the awkward part: a lot of the same people complaining about brain rot are the exact same people who helped make it popular. Millions of people watch the content, share the content, react to the content, and then they act surprised when the algorithm delivers more of it. Listen, Linda, I get the impulse to blame the technology. But I think the obvious question becomes, why does this kind of content keep spreading? And then the answer has less to do with creativity and a lot more to do with incentives. Because if a restaurant keeps serving junk food, like Wendy's, it might be because customers keep ordering it. Have no idea why. But that's not a robot problem. That is a human behavior problem. So here's the thing you need to know if you don't already, and I would be surprised if you don't know. And that is that the internet runs on incentives. I was reading an article the other day. The guy was ranting about how awful YouTube has become because of how it's been monetized. And over the last couple years, people have really complained about the premium pricing. But how do they pay for the system? How do they deliver that much content to that many people every single day? There's a cost to that. So there are incentives that enable our internet to run. And so platforms will measure watch time, clicks, engagement, how long you stay before moving on to the next. They don't measure wisdom. They don't measure depth. And they don't measure thoughtful conversation. So the system naturally evolves toward content that is fast, emotional, and easy to consume. Volume scales faster. And that leads us to something new, something people are starting to notice outside of the internet. Artificial intelligence didn't lower the quality of the content, it revealed how low the bar already was. And here's where the conversation gets interesting. Because the term AI slop isn't just being used for internet content anymore. People are starting to use it at work. Emails are written by AI, reports are written by AI, presentations are written by AI, assignments written by AI, and now companies are starting to complain about something called AI work slop. Now managers are noticing something strange. Employees using AI to produce work. And then other employees are using AI to summarize that work. And then other employees are using AI to review that work. And then suddenly you've got an entire chain of people producing work that nobody actually thought about. AI is writing emails. AI is summarizing meetings. AI is drafting reports. AI is reviewing reports. And people are calling it AI work slop. But if we're being honest, a lot of workplace communication was already pretty formulaic. Corporate buzzwords, template emails, slide decks nobody reads. AI didn't invent any of that. It just automated it. But once AI starts producing work, another issue very quickly shows up, one that the internet has struggled with for years: fake expertise. The internet has always rewarded something strange: confidence over expertise. People speak with certainty about things like economics, politics, technology, medicine, sometimes with very little to no expertise, because confidence spreads faster than nuance. And algorithms, they reward confidence. Artificial intelligence didn't invent fake expertise, it simply joins the same ecosystem. And to understand why that happens, you have to understand what the internet replaced. And that's gatekeepers. Before the internet passed through filters, you had editors, you had publishers, and you had producers. And while those systems were flawed, they did slow the spread of bad information. Anyone can publish instantly today. And that democratization has some benefits, but it also collapses the signal to noise ratio. And so now everybody produces content, which means noise increases dramatically, which brings us to the real engine behind the modern internet: algorithms and your attention. At its core, the internet is not a knowledge system. And I know a few years back, people thought Google was a truth engine, meaning, well, if Google said it, it must be right. And that wasn't really the case. The internet is an attention marketplace. It is a platform that sells attention to advertisers. So the real product isn't the information, the value of it, the depth, the quality. That doesn't matter, because the real product is time. Time that you spend watching, you spend scrolling, and you spend reacting. And when attention becomes currency, content evolves to capture attention, but not necessarily to inform. Because if content becomes unlimited, something else becomes scarce, and that is signal. So, what happens next? If AI can produce content instantly, then producing content becomes less valuable. The new skill becomes something different altogether: judgment, clarity, trust. Because when information becomes abundant, signal becomes rare. And the people who produce signal will be far more valuable than the people producing noise. And that leads us to the uncomfortable part of this conversation, because the system doesn't really decide what spreads. You do. I do. Well, not me, because I'm a little more aware, but you do. You spread it. Here's the uncomfortable truth: algorithms don't have opinions, they have patterns. They learn from behavior, not ideals. If millions of people click on outrage, the system will deliver more outrage. If millions of people watch brain rot, the system will deliver more brain rot. The algorithm feeds you what you keep eating. Artificial intelligence didn't invent the slop economy. Humans built it. So after looking at the timeline, the incentives, and the system, the conclusion becomes really hard to ignore. Okay, so what we've learned is technology amplifies human behavior. It does not replace it. And so when people say artificial intelligence has ruined the internet or is ruining the workplace, I'm not so sure. It might just be revealing how the system already worked. And don't you think it's possible that the people producing AI slop were producing human slop before? Listen, Larry, I understand the temptation to blame the machines. That's a hell of a lot easier than admitting we helped build the machine. But progress usually starts with a little bit of honesty. And anyway, that's just how I see it. Y'all take real good care of yourselves out there.